Hi everyone, my name is Kath Mackay. I'm Director of Life Sciences for Bruntwood HealthTech. We're absolutely thrilled to be co-sponsoring the conference this morning. For those of you that don't know much about Bruntwood HealthTech, we are the leading provider of property and innovation support to businesses working in the science and technology sector. Our sites are home to over 500 companies working in science and technology. We've got 10 campuses and 6 locations. We're very active in Manchester and the surrounding area, and I'll talk to that. But we've recently expanded into Oxford and Cambridge this year, which is very exciting for us. As a northern-based company that's made it big, being able to take what we've learned in Manchester and take that down south is absolutely fantastic for us. I won't kind of relock all our assets, but we own and manage the Alderley Park Science Campus around an hour down the road in Cheshire, which is home to 200 companies working in health and life sciences. We're absolutely thrilled to be in a partnership with University of Manchester Foundation Hospitals Trust on City Labs, City Labs 1, City Labs 2 and City Labs 3 and 4 in development. And it's a real privilege for us to work with such a forward-thinking health trust who are very keen to support businesses in the sector and forge relationships between those health tech SMEs and the wider health system to advance the products and services of the future. And I'll finish off development-wise by saying that we're absolutely thrilled to be working with the University of Manchester on ID Manchester, which is, for those of you who know the area well, in old money, that's going to be on the old UNIS site. And it's going to be a £1.5 billion campus, which is set to be one of the big innovation districts in Europe. And we're absolutely thrilled to be working with the university on that and kicking that off soon. One thing that we're really proud to be working in is supporting our businesses. We're not just a property company, so we work really closely with the health system and we work closely with entrepreneurs so they're able to form companies, grow them and scale them. And property remains an important part of the ecosystem and it's an essential for businesses working in the area. But the support we give through our innovation services platform and connections to experts and clinicians is absolutely fundamental in developing the health tech products of the future. That's enough about me, enough about Bruntwood HealthTech. I will actually allow the remaining kind of panel members, I'll take a seat actually, it feels a bit weird kind of stood here, kind of talking down at you. But we've heard from Guy and Henry. Andrew, should we hear from you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, certainly, thank you, Kath. My name's Andrew Aldridge, I'm a partner at Deepridge Capital. We are venture capital specialists specialising in tech and life sciences, so obviously a lot of health tech. We are Northwest based. So yeah, we've invested over £200 million to date. Just under 70 million of that has been in the health tech and life sciences space. That's mainly over the last 5 years, and about 40% of that's been in the Northwest. So yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Vicky.
Hi everyone, so I'm Vicky Britano from Mills & Reeve. I'm a corporate lawyer in the firm and obviously we're based here in this great space and I think this is the first public event we've had, so I hope everyone's enjoying it as much as I am. The space is great, but I've spent about 14 years of my career advising owner managed businesses, SMEs, on kind of growth strategies, general life cycle of a company, and very recently working with Charlotte. I joined M&R 4 years ago, and although I've worked with healthcare clients before, the focus very much at M&R is we have a very strong health sector focus. And so we've been seeing a lot of clients and taking on a lot of work in the health tech and life sciences space, working down at Alderley, as Kath mentioned as well. So yeah, looking forward to this panel. Great. Anyway.
Well, we will make sure that we've got plenty of time for Q&A. So you can see it's a very esteemed panel. So use their wisdom, ask them anything. I'll say that on their behalf. But I use my chair's privileges just to kind of start off the discussion with a couple of questions. And I'll direct the first one at you, Henry. It was really interesting to hear about the 10-point plan. And I think what I find interesting is you've got this UK-wide remit. I'd like to understand a little bit more about how you see Manchester and what do you think about, what's Manchester got going for it? Where do you think there are challenges? And yeah, I mean, it's quite easy to have a conference around Manchester where we're all patting our backs on kind of how great Manchester is. But how do you see it and where do you think there are gaps that we need to work on?
Yeah, it's a great question and certainly as perhaps you may have, the shrewdest among you may have been able to spot. I'm not a local, so do please bear that in mind as I answer. But we at Tech UK actually over the course of the past year have been conducting a series of sort of deep dive research exercises into what we've termed local digital capital. So essentially working across a range of regions over the UK, working with big tech companies, SMEs, large local employers, key public sector stakeholders in each region to understand how they think their region is doing when it comes to, we've called it local digital capital. That's really a term that we use to articulate how well set up a region is to make the most of the next 10-year big digital opportunity. We've done this across, as I say, across the regions. Manchester, well, the Northwest, with I think we can agree Manchester as the kind of the heavyweight in that region, scored very highly in some criteria, in particular digital infrastructure, which was great to see. The big gap. So this, I should say, I'm starting at a high level, talking across tech in general, and I'll deep dive into health in a second. But digital infrastructure was a real plus point. The biggest, I think, challenge was digital skills. Unsurprisingly, it's actually, in my view, that's not common. That's not unique, rather, to this sector. In my view, skills is the biggest constraint on national ambitions when it comes to digital. That's been the case for a few years. The past year, it's got even better. I think there's been a 60% plus increase in the number of kind of tech vacancies over the past year, a 12% increase over the past year in tech salaries. It's probably the biggest tech salary bubble we've seen for a long time, because these skills are in such demand. And obviously, if you don't, to Guy's point, people, technology, process, if you don't have the right people, then it's very hard to make the progress you need to be making. So that's in general terms. When it comes to, sorry, is my microphone working? Sorry. Yeah, okay. When it comes to health tech specific challenges and opportunities, the opportunity is pretty, I say there are a lot of, in the words of Ian Drury, a lot of reasons to be cheerful. For a couple of people got it. Lot of positives on the opportunity side for a number of reasons, a lot of which we've heard already. Head start on devolution, on ICSs. To pick up my point earlier, I think if you are an innovator, if you are an SME, or you're looking to set one up in this sector, the advent of ICS is a hugely positive step, and hopefully your life will be much easier than it would have been 5-10 years ago. I think that's very positive. The related to that, I think the intelligent client capability of a lot of the local health landscape is quite positive. We've heard from Guy already. There was a gentleman earlier from the NCA. I think the work Tracy and the team there are doing is really first class as well. And obviously, the more intelligent the client, the easier it is to sell into that, or the easier it is to deliver solutions into the landscape. So that's really positive. And the other critical thing, really, from is we've also heard that innovation is really needed. There are significant, Guy had some good stats, which off the top of my head I can't remember, but they were impressive around some of the health inequalities in the region. That's really, really important. So, if you are an innovator, the sector needs that innovation. So, we're trying to make accessing the landscape as easy as possible, and it's really crucial that you do try and you do keep faith in order to do it, because it is needed. At the roundtable we hosted with Mills and Reeve a couple of months ago, someone else from Manchester said as well, I think school children in Manchester lost more hours of school over the pandemic than children in any other region. That there are inequalities here that do need to be addressed, and we need tech and digital to be at the heart of that. In terms of Other wider challenges, really, apart from skills, the other one is still, of course, picking up on my final point, the fairly dry point around procurement. It is, public procurement is not easy. It is challenging. I don't think it's unfair to say this is a disproportionately difficult sector to do business in. I don't know if people would disagree. For some very good reasons, you know, public procurement does need to be open, fair and transparent. We do need to have the highest possible standards, but we also need innovation. We also need smart people inventing smart stuff to help us solve these problems. And so navigating that landscape is still a challenge, but there is, as I refer to, there's a lot of work at the centre on how we can make procurement easier, which is great. So
if I can stay with you on the next question, actually, it's been kind of spoken about at a very high level, the kind of absorption of NHSX and NHS Digital into NHS England. What's your kind of view on that? And are you, does Tech UK have a concern around the kind of loss of agility being kind of sucked into the big machine, or should we be viewing it as solely an opportunity?
So it's a really good question. I'm gonna slightly disappoint everyone with the answer that it is quite early to say, but there are a few. But I don't know if anyone saw Simon Bolton's thread about this development. So Simon Bolton, the CEO of NHS Digital, incoming CIO for NHS England, did quite an interesting thread on Twitter about this announcement. And I think at a high level, the business logic to this is really unarguable. There is a lot of logic, you know, just from an overhead point of view, but he also said, I think, put it quite well. He said, no leading organization in the world should really have tech strategy and operational strategy in different functions. So there's a very clear business logic there. However, what we don't want to see is any loss of momentum. I touched on earlier, there are significant national initiatives around data, around interoperability, around procurement reform for technology that are really important. And if those get paused or fall by the wayside while the furniture is moved around internally, that would be a crying shame. Now, I'm optimistic that those at the top are cognizant of that fact and will be doing all they can in order to stop that. I think the other slight, not concern, but other point to watch is to make sure that this consolidation creates a strong central pillar for tech, you know, really a really strong function that can drive the technology agenda rather than an eroding of the, because I think we'd all agree over the past 3 years or so, the tech agenda in this sector has really risen up the batting order, which has been great to see. I hope the consolidation strengthens that rather than erodes it. But sorry, I'm holding court with you. So
I want to make sure we've got some time for questions. Yeah. Vicky, I'll turn to you. I think I suppose you're in a privileged position working to support these companies with your Mills and Reeve hat on. And what's your view on the needs of health tech companies in terms of the support they need when you're working with companies on their business plans and their IP strategy? Are you seeing any kind of common themes and gaping holes where those types of businesses need some support?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, health tech, we've heard a lot this morning already about how those two have a great focus, really exciting sectors for the Northwest. But equally, when you're a growing company, you're often running fast in terms of prioritising, getting the software in place, getting your platform operational, dealing with procurement processes, which can, you know, take up all of your resource, finding the right people, and kind of running with all those steps and getting your revenue in place, which is what you need. You kind of, what we find is we kind of come into the fold when people are looking for investment, and investment is key here because companies are growing so fast in order to pay the salaries of the developers who are in this great kind of salary bubble at the moment, in order to get the other kind of investment that you need for your platform to grow to be the best platform it can be for you to sell into the NHS or other private sector, health sector businesses. You need investment support. And I think for Manchester, we've got a great private equity space. We've got a great deal of private money, whether it's from EIS, high net worth funds like Deepbridge. You've got a whole host of venture capitalists and private equity firms. So the availability of money is there. It's finding the right partner, really, in terms of who you need to be partnering up with, who can help you most in your next growth strategy. But coming at it from a legal perspective, we often kind of not put the brakes on, but we sometimes ask questions which mean that people have to look at the other sides of their business. Where are you on your legal and administrative functions? So we'll get people coming to us saying, okay, right, we're now at a stage where we need investment, or we've been approached by investors looking to invest in our business, or even we've got potential sales and acquisitions on the horizons. And we'll kind of work with businesses in terms of, right, where are you at in your business cycle? Those contracts you've got in place, are they all signed correctly? Mundane questions that have been dated, is everyone agreeing with what's going on? Those developers that you engaged on a contract basis that are not involved in your business, did you sort out what arrangements were in place to have the IP and the software that they developed assigned to your business? Have you got all your IP protection that you need to have? Those employees or those business associates who did a few favours for you whilst you were growing and developing, and you may have offered equity or other bonus incentives to them, has that all been documented? And we're finding that because people have been focusing quite rightly on getting the revenue and getting the platform operational and getting their service right to sell, that things like that, the kind of legal administrative processes have been not left by the wayside, because it's common. You know, it's not just a common theme for health tech companies, it's a common theme for all business. And we're seeing that that's where businesses need that bit of more of a handhold. And it's not just, you know, legal advisors in terms of us who would help with that. Financial advisors, you know, if you're going through an investment, you'll need to stand behind your numbers. Have you got the right financial team to be able to present your financial projections, your forecasts, to be able to get that investment from private money in? So there's a whole host of roles. Patent attorneys, again, you know, looking at your IP, have you got the right protection in place there? This is all things that potential investors and acquirers, and even, you know, when you're going through a procurement policy, you may get asked those questions as well. It's all those steps of, have you got everything ready to take the next step in your business?
Thanks, Vicky. And perhaps I'll ask a similar question to you. I mean, how are you seeing anything where businesses need extra support? And I suppose I'm really pleased to understand kind of how many investments you're making in this region. Are you seeing the number of investable opportunities kind of reach you in the northwest of Manchester from a health tech point of view?
Absolutely. I think you know, it's the number and the quality of what we're seeing is improving all the time. I think, you know, there's probably never been more innovation in the tech space, particularly around healthcare. You know, we're very fortunate we've got a government which, you know, two of their key pillars for growth over the next 10 years are digital and health. So you put the two together, and you guys in this room are right at the centre of what they're wanting to do. So, you know, we should see that. And from, you know, what was Henry was saying before about that kind of coming down. And so I think, yeah, from our perspective, we're seeing that drive and the appetite, you know, and what Guy was saying before about, you know, the ICSs and things and everything as a body looking for digital transformation is a key driver. So I think there's never been more kind of desire. There's probably been never more funding around for people starting out in this space as well, which I think is great to see. You know, interestingly, earlier this year I was on a panel. It was Zoom, obviously, back in the day. You know, it's nice to be in front of people again. But there was, I think, it was about 48 different funders in the northwest on that call. And they were either, you put most of them into two, one was either seed stage funding, so angel networks, etc., and real kind of that first 100K maybe that you're getting into a company. And then you had your private equity, which were looking, you know, they want revenues of over £1 million, etc., in that area. The bit in the middle is really where the likes of the Enterprise Investment Scheme come in to bridge that gap. And it's interesting, on that call, there's only two of us who were in that space. And I think that's where there's that kind of disconnect still slightly from this. It's quite easy. I say that, you know, I say that very much tongue in cheek, but it's quite easy to go and get out that first 10, 50 grand of funding. And it's quite easy to go and get that £50 million of funding, but to go and get that first £1 million tranche that you need to really prove concept and take it where you want to go is probably the hardest money that you'll ever raise from that perspective. I think kind of the great thing about going last on a panel is that you kind of get to reiterate and bring together some of the things people said. But yeah, the key thing about procurement is key, because I think particularly in the health tech space, getting that track record to then get the larger Series B funding rounds, etc., is critical. And one of the things that I hope we don't lose as we go to centralise things is actually the ability for innovators to actually speak to clinicians and be able to get clinicians on board to actually champion what they're doing, etc., because that is critical. You've got to have that way in. It's great to have kind of large bodies that you can go to through procurement, etc. But you still need that person to stick their name behind what you're doing and saying this is a great idea. So I think that's the kind of the challenge that we're seeing now from a lot of innovators, is that actually they need to get that name behind them, need to get that clinical research to help them then get through the front door, as Guy was talking about before, to actually go in and say, look, this is why it's a good idea, rather than just going and saying, I've developed a bit of tech. So I think there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of drive, a lot of interest, but I think that key thing is getting that first kind of clinical empirical evidence to then actually be able to get in the front door with the likes of the ICSs, etc., to actually be able to procure what you need to.
Great, thank you. I'll come to you, Guy, just for a quick question before we go to a couple of questions from the floor. We've mentioned in a couple of talks this morning about the privilege that Manchester has in terms of the devolved health and care budget, and how the uniqueness of that position can't be disputed. I think from a business point of view, what does that mean in terms of what are those industrial opportunities that the control over the health and care budget give those types of SMEs? And maybe there are a couple of examples that you can allude to in businesses that you've worked with that have benefited from Manchester's unique position of control of its own destiny and finances.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. In terms of the £7 billion that we've got with the health and social care budget, to be frank and open and honest, most of that is actually targeted at clinical delivery services. And so I don't think there's anything specifically unique that I could sort of talk about that particularly sort of sets Manchester apart in terms of that sort of business growth element. What does set, I think, Manchester apart is the infrastructure element in terms of, the use of Midas, which is our innovation and our business growth organisation within Greater Manchester. I think our ability to get funding from the European Development Fund, for example, and the ability then to join the sort of network together about how you actually go from idea and concept to landing that within a health system, because I think that's the last mile integration element. So I'll default to this illustrious panel in terms of funding and how that sort of flows in GM. I think from my perspective, the uniqueness is really around how you land your solution within an operating model, and I think that is the biggest challenge. Really, is that there's lots of tech. The question is how are you going to land that in a transformed operating model? So being a technician, I spend 99% of my time not on technology, but actually understanding the operating model clinically and then landing what we need to do in that sense. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So, but to answer your question, uniqueness in Manchester, I think, is we've got the infrastructure, we've got an innovation pipeline, we've got a structural set of funding opportunities, mechanisms to enable organisations to thrive and to be able to get innovations to the front door of clinical practice.
Can I just add something just to that? I think one of the key things when we're looking at companies that we are going to fund is that, yes, we see great tech, but it's those ones that can actually explain how it's going to be operational within a clinical setting. Those are what set them apart. So I think that's a key point you make there.
I think we've got a few minutes actually from questions to the floor, either on these topics or anything you've heard our panellists talk to today. If you could say kind of, who you are and where you're from, that'd be great.
Hi, Taz from Dockabode again. I've got a question for Henry, well, two questions actually. We're on all the big frameworks, IT Futures, HSSF, Crown Commercial. It's very frustrating that new frameworks just pop up all the time, very specific ones. And we're already on, all the due diligence, all the effort required to get on the major national ones. Is Tech UK doing anything about that? And the second question is about, you talked about the capital versus, and probably for Guy as well, there's so much capital money, we're a SaaS company. When are we going to start seeing revenue funding coming in?
Yeah, I mean, two excellent questions. So the first one, we are doing everything we can on the framework point. I mean, you make a very good point. Nothing more frustrates all of our members when they see a new framework being created for a small number of suppliers by a few people, a few organisations coming together to spin up that framework. Obviously, I hope it's not too controversial to say. If you're an organisation spinning up a framework, there is quite a clear financial interest for those organisations. Anyone who's familiar with commercial frameworks knows that the framework provider takes a management fee on the procurements run via that framework, which means that I'm not sure that model is necessarily incentivizing the right behaviours. It's a well understood problem, but understanding the problem and solving it are two different things. So we are working with commercial teams across sort of the very centre of the sector to help create some best practice guidance on use of frameworks, and the two, the top line item being the consolidation of frameworks, the use of established existing routes to market. It should very much be an established route to market first approach. If there's no other way you can buy a thing, then look at spinning up a framework yourself. But that should be the default. Unfortunately, at least unfortunately in my view, there's nothing in either the Health Social Care Bill or the Procurement Reform Green Paper on preventing contracting authorities spinning up their own frameworks, which is slightly disappointing. In our submission to the consultation on the Green Paper, we did encourage them in that point, but failing any help from legislation, then all we can do really is encourage best practice and make sure that contracting authorities are hearing the best practice both from the centre and from the suppliers. We both need to say everyone agrees this is the best way to conduct yourselves, this is the best way to go to market, and hopefully then we'll encourage procurement in that direction. The other question was sort of Ardell and it was CapEx and OpEx. Yeah, again, a great point. It's been sort of 10 years since, for those sort of more familiar with the broader kind of GovTech, disaggregation, user centricity, cloud first agenda. It's been sort of 10 years since the establishment of GDS and the tech code of practice and sort of disaggregation of large IT contracts across public sector. We're doing the new thing, but we're funding it as though it were the old thing. And that's clearly not appropriate towards the kind of, as we move more and more towards software as a service, commoditization of tech, there does need to be a bit of a balance there. It is a challenge because ultimately this is a very senior conversation at the very heart of government. We make the point. It's a point that I think a lot of people in NHS, EI and X&D are familiar with. I think they agree. But it will, frankly, be a slow burn, in my view, in terms of shifting things in the right direction.
I'll have to stop there because we have got some other hands going up. I think we're just to draw the session to a close shortly. But we have got a break coming up, haven't we? So we can continue discussions and questioning the panel over a cup of tea.
Good morning, Danny Simpson, Mid Communications. Two questions, but one for everybody as well. So hopefully it'll give us some good thoughts out. First of all, tech and digitalisation is fantastic as the secondary. The primary has to be connectivity, and obviously the UK is ranked 49th as a country for connectivity. We've all seen connectivity challenges, and the health tech is no different than any other sector who's suffering in poverty with lack of connectivity. So how is the tech sector challenging government to get that £5 billion promised budget to help infrastructure of connectivity in the UK? How are we challenging and how are we doing on that challenge here in Manchester? And the second question to everybody is, what are you most excited about from an innovation and digitalisation from a tech piece that's to come in the next 2 or 3 years? What one specific sector or part is exciting you the most that we can all kind of energise and bounce off today?
I think we should start. I don't know, how long have we got, Charlotte? We've got just maybe. Okay, can we do, would you mind if can we end on your last question, because it's a great one, and can we do the first one over a cup of tea? Would that suit you? Okay, who wants to go first? What excites you most about the sector?
I'll go first.
Oh, that saved me, thank you.
So I think one of the most untapped things is the use of social media and digital marketing, about how we actually shift behaviour and culture, because that is, I think there's a massive opportunity around that space. So how do we create connective communities that are grounded in, in their local community at the neighbourhood level? How do you bring energised organisations and people together? And we need to make much better use of that connected social media to breed sort of an element of community and culture that's localised to a particular area that is targeted at driving a wellness agenda.
Vicky.
Similar, actually. I was going to talk about kind of healthy aging. I'm kind of getting to a middle age, and my parents are still very sprightly. But going back to the poverty point, Manchester still does, the Greater Manchester region still does have that, and I think social media focusing on how we can digitise healthy alternatives, healthy options for us. Things like kind of exercise, introducing exercise. The pandemic did it great, didn't it? We had all kinds of things going on via the media in terms of how to keep ourselves fit during the pandemic. And I think that's another area that we can exploit over the next few years, and I hope it does get that way.
Henry?
I think for me, the most exciting potential really is I would say this, but is use of data. Obviously, that's fairly generic and a bit of a free hit as an answer. So specifically, it's around something we've not really touched on, but Guy touched on it a bit earlier. There's around prevention. Prevention is always better than the cure. And it was one in 3 people are about on the cusp of getting diabetes. Is that the stat? Right. So how can we harness data to help understand who those 1 in 3 are and how we can encourage behaviours to stop, as you said, to stop that tipping over. Absolutely. So I think the importance of using data in an ethical way, obviously, but the importance of data and the potential of patient-facing apps to help people take a bit more ownership of their own healthcare to prevent people getting sick, I think is hugely exciting. There's big opportunities.
Do you mind if I just add one point to that, really?
I'll get told off.
Which is because there's a big fascination around data. I absolutely agree. The challenge really is lots of insight. We generate lots of insight. The last mile integration is how you generate action from the insight, and you actually commission services. So actually somebody's paid to actually do something with the insight, and that to me is the key pivot of an ICS. What it needs to be able to achieve. Got great insight. How do you action it?
I'll let you have the last word.
My 2 penny worth is following on from what Henry said. I think we've had a great kind of kickstart, if you like, to the adoption of digital healthcare. You've not been able to go and see a GP for 18 months. You've been put off going to A&E, etc. So people are adopting online platforms to actually access healthcare, but also around the prevention piece. There's a lot more kind of going on, and I think I'm really looking forward to seeing that expand now, kind of almost using all of the sadness and everything around COVID, but actually it's been a great kickstart for that kind of digital healthcare adoption. I think it's an exciting future there.
Yeah, we've got I'm going to misquote the stat, but it's something around kind of, I don't know, is it 15 years of progress in the NHS in 5 weeks? And you'll know that stat better than me as healthcare professionals, but we certainly have got this kind of open goal really now to take what we've learned through the pandemic and progress new innovation into the system. Great, I'll finish there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.